Did you know this man, who murdered at least 33 young men and teenage boys? He buried 29 of them in the crawl space right beneath his suburban Chicago home. And you might know him as Pogo the Clown. Introduction: the clown next door. He wasn't some shadowy boogeyman confined to nightmares. He was flesh and blood. He was John Wayne Gacy Jr., born January 17, 1942. And outwardly, he was the epitome of the American dream, gone slightly sour, yet undeniably present. A respected local businessman running his own successful contracting company. A politically connected community volunteer schmoozing with local officials. A jovial, if sometimes overbearing neighbor, known for throwing lavish block parties at his home, 8213 West Summerdale Avenue, in unincorporated Norwood Park Township. But beneath this carefully constructed, almost obsessively maintained mask of middle-class normalcy lurked a sadistic monster of unparalleled cruelty. How could such profound, predatory evil hide so effectively for so long in plain sight? How did Pogo the Clown, a figure seemingly dedicated to childhood joy, performing magic tricks at hospitals and parades, coexist within the same skin as the killer clown, whose final, horrifying trick was always death? This is the chilling, deeply disturbing paradox of John Wayne Gacy, a true profile of the devil who walked, laughed, and killed among us. The perfect citizen, a mask of success. To truly understand Gacy's horrifying success in deception, you have to appreciate the sheer depth and breadth of the facade he built. He didn't just blend in, he actively sought the spotlight, craving respectability. After a somewhat troubled early life, marked by a difficult relationship with an abusive father, Gacy seemed determined to prove himself. His contracting business, PDM Contractors, standing for painting, decorating, and maintenance, which he founded in 1971 after moving back to the Chicago area, was genuinely successful. It provided him not only with a steady income and a veneer of entrepreneurial spirit, but also, chillingly, a constant stream of potential victims, young men, often desperate for work, who saw him as a legitimate employer. He threw himself into community activities with manic energy. He became a prominent and driving figure in the local Jaycee's Junior Chamber of Commerce, organizing parades and events. His tireless efforts didn't go unnoticed. In 1978, the very year his killing spree would end, he was lauded with their prestigious Man of the Year award. His ambition extended into local politics. As a Democratic precinct captain, he was a familiar face at fundraisers and rallies, rubbing shoulders with aldermen and aspiring politicians. This relentless networking culminated in perhaps the most surreal and infamous symbol of his hidden life, that photograph taken on May 6, 1978. There he is, beaming, pinning a Jaycee's S-pin, representing the Secret Service protecting the First Lady on Rosalynn Carter during Chicago's annual Polish Constitution Day parade. The proximity of such darkness to the highest echelons of society remains staggering. He curated the image of a family man as well. Though his first marriage to Marlon Wires ended partly due to his hidden life and abuse, he remarried Carol Hoff in 1972. He had children and stepchildren, played the part of the doting, if sometimes overbearing father. His home on Summerdale Avenue became famous in the neighborhood for its large summer parties, often featuring roasted pigs, copious amounts of beer, and sometimes even Gacy himself, performing as Pogo. Neighbors, by and large, described him as outgoing, helpful, maybe a bit loud, but ultimately a generous and involved member of their community. He constructed an almost impenetrable fortress of respectability, using charm, relentless community involvement, and calculated political connections as his bricks and mortar. And for 6 terrifying years, almost nobody saw the rot festering deep inside. House of Horrors, The Crawl Secret. But the darkness wasn't just metaphorical, it was sickeningly literal, festering right under the floorboards of 8213 West Summerdale Avenue. That unassuming brick ranch house, the site of those cheerful barbecues, wasn't just a home. Between approximately January 3, 1972, with the murder of Timothy McCoy, and December 11, 1978, with the disappearance of Robert Piest, it became a tomb. The unraveling of Gacy's carefully constructed world began, as it so often does, with one missing person who someone refused to forget. On December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Piest vanished after telling his mother he was meeting a contractor named John Gacy to discuss a potential $4 an hour summer job. Piest worked part-time at the Nissan Pharmacy in nearby Des Plaines, where Gacy's company had recently done remodeling. When Robert didn't return home, his parents immediately contacted the police. Investigators in Des Plaines, led by Lieutenant Joseph Kozenchak, quickly zeroed in on Gacy. A background check revealed the critical piece of information Gacy had likely hoped was buried in the past: his 1968 conviction in Waterloo, Iowa, for sodomy with a teenage boy, for which he had served 18 months of a 10-year sentence before being paroled back to Illinois. This immediately escalated suspicion. Intense police surveillance began. Officers tailed him relentlessly. They noted his increasingly erratic behavior, his attempts to mislead them, his strange comments. Armed with mounting circumstantial evidence, police obtained a search warrant for Gacy's home, executed in the early hours of December 13th. The initial search revealed deeply suspicious items: handcuffs, books and magazines dealing with bondage and violence, a disturbing collection of seemingly random objects, later identified as belonging to other missing young men, trophies Gacy had kept. Under the immense pressure of constant surveillance and multiple interrogations, Gacy's facade began to crumble. He made conflicting statements, alluded to others being involved, tried to bargain. Finally, sleep-deprived and cornered, on December 20th, he began to talk. And what he revealed led investigators not just to a body, but to the true, unimaginable heart of his horror, the crawl space beneath his house. He described it himself: a cramped, damp, dark area under the main floor, accessible through closets barely tall enough to kneel in. He confessed he had buried bodies there. Beginning on December 21st, 1978, the day of Gacy's formal arrest, the gruesome task of excavation began. Forensic teams descended upon the quiet suburban house, turning it into a macabre archaeological dig. They navigated the suffocating space, carefully digging through the cold, damp earth, often mixed with pockets of lime that Gacy had thrown down in a crude, ineffective attempt to neutralize the overwhelming, putrid stench of decomposition, a smell he had frequently dismissed to guests and his wife as mere dampness or dead mice trapped in the walls. Over several agonizing weeks, under the glare of work lights and the world's media gathering outside, they unearthed body after body, often stacked or contorted to fit the limited space. 29 victims were eventually recovered from that subterranean hell beneath Gacy's home. The sheer psychological fortitude or profound depravity required to live, eat, sleep, conduct business, and entertain guests mere inches above the remains of dozens of young men he had personally murdered is almost impossible to fathom. 4 other known victims, whose bodies Gacy admitted he couldn't fit into the now crowded crawl space, were later found, badly decomposed, having been dumped from bridges into the nearby Des Plaines River. Inside the killer's trap. Gacy's reign of terror targeted a specific demographic, primarily teenage boys and young men, typically ranging in the age from 14-year-old Robert Piest to victims in their early 20s. He expertly preyed upon those he perceived as vulnerable or easily manipulated: runaways seeking shelter, youths hitchhiking or waiting alone at bus stops, young men desperate for employment, often approaching him directly through PDM contractors, and sometimes even individuals involved in the precarious world of street hustle.
He wielded his status like a weapon. The successful businessman, the friendly community figure. These personas disarmed his targets. He offered jobs with good pay, promised cash, plied them with alcohol or drugs, invited them back to his home on Summerdale Avenue under various pretexts. His methods of luring them were tragically varied, tailored to the individual. But once inside the house, the pattern became horrifyingly consistent. Trust would be established, often through conversation, shared drinks. Then came the manipulation, the shift in power. He frequently employed what became chillingly known as his handcuff trick. He'd produce a pair of handcuffs, suggesting it was a magic trick he performed as Pogo, or perhaps part of a kinky exploration. He might demonstrate how easily he could escape them, building false confidence. Once the cuffs were securely fastened on the victim, the trap was sprung. Escape was virtually impossible. Gacy, despite his portly, unassuming appearance, possessed immense brute strength, easily overpowering his younger victims. What followed was a descent into sadistic brutality involving sexual assault and torture. His preferred method of murder was asphyxiation, often utilizing a chillingly methodical tourniquet or garrote technique. He would loop a length of rope around the victim's neck, insert a stick or sometimes a hammer handle into the loop, and then twist it relentlessly tight. This method ensured complete physical control, prolonged the victim's suffering, and provided Gacy with the ultimate, terrifying power over their agonizing final moments. It was a calculated, sadistic ritual he refined and repeated again and again in the supposed safety of his suburban home. Unmasking the monster, confessions and defiance. When the full, ghastly extent of his crimes was finally revealed following his arrest on December 21, 1978, the mask of the friendly neighbor didn't just slip, it evaporated completely, exposing the cold, unrepentant monster beneath. Initially, Gacy played coy with investigators, offering denials and misdirection. But as the bodies literally began piling up from his crawl space, the confessions flowed. Disturbingly casual, graphically detailed, and utterly devoid of anything resembling remorse or empathy. He recounted the murders with a chilling detachment, sometimes speaking of his victims as if they were objects. It was during these chilling interviews that he uttered the line that would forever define his grotesque duality, perhaps seeking to explain himself, perhaps simply mocking the world. He said, "Clowns can get away with murder." At his highly publicized trial in 1980, facing overwhelming evidence, Gacy's defense attempted an insanity plea, arguing that alternate personalities, including one named Jack Hanley, were responsible for the killings. The jury saw through the desperate theatrical ploy and swiftly rejected it, finding him guilty on 33 counts of murder. Condemned to death, Gacy began what would be a 14-year stay on death row at Menard Correctional Center, later moved to Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. He became arguably the most notorious inmate in America. Far from showing contrition, he remained a defiant narcissist. He soaked up the media attention, corresponded with pen pals, and gained further morbid fame by taking up painting. His subjects? Often grotesque images of clowns, including bizarre self-portraits as Pogo, alongside skulls, skeletons, and strangely, even distorted Disney characters. Disturbingly, his artwork commanded high prices from collectors of murderabilia. His utter contempt for the world, for his victims, for the justice system, remained until the very end. On May 10, 1994, as he was strapped to the gurney at Stateville for execution by lethal injection, his final, snarled words were reportedly directed at those witnessing his death through the observation window. "Kiss my ass." John Wayne Gacy's legacy is one of profound, multifaceted horror. He is a testament not only to the terrifying depths of human depravity and sadistic violence, but also serves as a chilling, enduring reminder that the most monstrous evil doesn't always advertise itself. It can disguise itself meticulously and successfully for years behind the most ordinary, the most respected, even the most cheerful and welcoming of faces. In doing so, he forever stained the innocent image of the clown, twisting a symbol meant for laughter and joy into one synonymous with unspeakable fear.